How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Exploration Overland. My name is Zach, and today we're going to discuss the T8 Hub Tent that I have been using on my adventures when I have a second person with me on those adventures. So stay tuned, guys. So the T8 Hub Tent by Gazelle. Why do I have it? I have the T4 Hub Tent. Why did I need a T8 Hub Tent for some of my adventures when I had somebody else with me? The reasoning for that, first off, like I said in my previous video, if you're not with your significant other in a T4 Hub Tent, you are in very, very close quarters. There's not a ton of room where you may not run into the other person. And honestly, guys, it's very cramped if you have a second person with you. We're having the T8 Hub Tent, which is technically an 8-person tent. You have the ability to, each of you have basically your own T4 Hub Tent. Because what the T8 Hub Tent is it is, in a sense, two T4s sewn together and taken out the middle to give you a T8 Hub Tent. So you basically, each person gets their own T4 Hub Tent, their own side to themselves, which has been awesome to have when I have a second person, and is the big reason why we got it. Now, when I say we, the only person that's been using it so far is my dad. As you guys know, he comes on some of my adventures with me, and this year alone it was the first year using this tent, and we have used it in the Ozarks, and we have used it through our trip doing the Idaho backcountry discovery route. And let me tell you guys something. Last July, doing my trip through Colorado with him in the T4 was rough. We were slammed in it. We were really close together. It was uncomfortable. And I don't care how many times you've been camping with other people, being in close proximity to somebody else that isn't your significant other isn't always the most comfortable thing in the world. And for me, that stands true every time. I want some space. And so does my dad. And having the T8 allows other people to come with me that may not have camping gear, gives them their own room. So we have the T8 Hub Tent. And guys, this tent is huge. I mean, it is massive. We have dubbed it, the Taj Mahal of tents, guys. You walk in there, the very highest points in the tent where the two ceilings are at their tallest is 78 inches. That's right, 78 inches. I can stand completely upright in the tent whatsoever without really hitting my head on top of the tent. It is awesome. Just to be able to change within the tent without having to crouch, things like that. It is massive. And the square footage of the tent completely erect is about 100 square feet. According to Gazelle's website, it is about 100 square feet. That's massive. And the reason I know it's massive, guys, is when me and my dad use this tent, we both sleep on Lost Horizon sleeping mattresses. They're about this thick. They're about a double size mattress that we inflate. We each can inflate it on our sides and still have space to put all of our gear on the inside of the tent. That's how huge this tent is, guys. It is massive. And there are lots of different pockets throughout the tent. The middle does have a door, and by that I mean you can roll up this door or you can unroll it and zip it, and it divides the tent into basically the two T4 Hub Tents. So you can have privacy, then you can unzip it and keep it open. It is huge, very roomy, and we have been enjoying this tent immensely. Like my last video I did on the T4 Hub Tent, I'm going to get you into the pros, the cons of this tent, because I've already given you my overall thought, guys. I really do like this tent. It has been great, but there are some great things about it, some negative things about it. So let's jump into the pros of this tent. First off, it's huge. I've already said it enough. It is massive. It doesn't take much to erect this tent. It's just like all the other Gazelle style hub tents. You just start pulling the sides. Once it's up, you put the rain fly on, you push up the tops, and boom, it's erect. This tent takes a little bit longer to pull, open if you're by yourself. Yes, it can be done by yourself. It just takes a little extra time because instead of 4 walls, you have 6 walls to pull out. It takes a little bit more time, but you can still do it in less than a minute. If you have a second person, less than 30 seconds, that tent is up in the air and good to go. Putting on the rain fly, it's a little more complicated, and we'll get into that here shortly, but it's just as simple as the T4. You throw it on there, you put the stakes into the stake holders, push up the tent, boom, it's up. Guys, you can do this tent in less than a minute. It is awesome for a 8-person tent. No stakes, no sliding shit through canvas. Boom, it's up. It's awesome. Another pro of this tent, it is very much waterproof. Now, I have waterproofed this extra to ensure that we have no rain going into it whatsoever. Guys, I've been in a rainstorm. It has not leaked. Nothing. We have got no water coming up from underneath the rain fly. We have had no issues weather-wise with this tent. Just as well, we've had no issues with the canvas of this tent. This canvas is just like the T4 tent. It is quite strong. It is very durable, and we have no rips in this canvas at all, and everything mechanically in the tent, pulling out the walls, ensuring that they stay up, has never gone wrong. It has worked perfectly fine. The other thing about this tent, just like the T4, is the zippers are very strong. They are some very heavy duty zippers, guys. You can pull on them. I never feel like if I pull too hard, the zipper is going to break or something is going to rip. They just work really well, and it is comforting when you're undoing the doors and stuff that the zipper doesn't feel like it's just a flimsy zipper and something will break. It doesn't feel like that whatsoever, and it is been very well, it's been good. We've never broken it. Now let's step into the cons of it all. And the reason I say that is I've gone through the good. This tent has quite a few cons. Unlike the T4 tent where there are some of the cons you can live with, this tent has some cons that can potentially stop you from wanting to use this tent. And they are annoying, and they are cons that we have run into. Henceforth why I'm saying them, because they have almost stopped us using this tent now. Let's start with not the tent itself, but the bag the tent comes in. It is not a strong material. You think it would be as tough as the T4 tent bag? It is not. This tent bag rips extremely easy. Both ends of this bag are completely shredded on our tent. They have holes all throughout the bag, and guys, it has literally just been from putting the tent in it and taking it out of it that it's ripped. Just that simple. It is not a tough bag at all. The zipper is great. You never feel like it's going to break. They use the same zipper on it, but the material of the bag is very crappy. It is very flimsy, and it, like I said, in both the ends where it's supposed to be, the most protection, it has ripped from its seams and has started shredding. So the bag, though, you can probably, I don't know if you can get a replacement bag. I haven't looked into that yet, but there are, you can probably find a bigger durable bag, like a Christmas tree bag, that you can put this tent into. You can do that. But the bag does rip. The other thing, this tent is 56 pounds. Dry weight of this tent collapsed in the bag is 56 pounds. Now, you're probably thinking, well, that's not overly heavy for an 8-pound, an 8-person tent. Which, for me, it's not bad. But if you're trying to have somebody move this tent, or if somebody's not quite as strong as you, this tent can be a hassle to try and move on your own to get it to where you need it to go. It is quite a heavy tent when it is in the bag, and trying to lift it to place it on a shelf, if you're trying to store it, putting it up on the roof of your vehicle, it does take a bit of oomph to get it up that high, especially if you're by yourself, because it's not like a 50-50 weight distribution in the bag. There is a side that is heavier and a side that is lighter, and this tent bag is about 4.5 feet long. So you are grabbing it quite far out to try and move it. It is a heavy tent. It's not necessarily a con to the tent, but it is heavy, and it is something to be noted that this isn't something you can easily just throw around. Another con, this is one of those big cons that can stop you from wanting to use the tent, is though the tent is of a very good material, the rainfly is not. It's a good enough material, it has never leaked on us, but it has ripped. Guys, trying to put the rainfly onto this tent, if you do not have 2 people, it can be a massive challenge. Even with 2 people, it is a bit of a challenge, because as you're trying to throw this extremely long rainfly up over the tent, it can either get caught on the stake holders that you slide the rainfly, stakes into, and it can rip it. We have found that in the middle of the tent, where the seams kind of connect and spread back out, it is starting to rip at those seams. It is just coming undone. It is a very annoying thing, because this tent wasn't cheap. This tent is, guys, it's over $530. I think it's closer to about $560 for this tent. If you don't get it on sale, sometimes if it's not on sale, it can be up over $600. This tent's not cheap, and to have the rainfly just fall apart after 2 trips, and we take pretty good care of putting it, the rainfly on and off, it's become annoying, and it is starting, it is ripping in places where if it does rain, water will come through. So that is a massive con to us that has, on our last trip, thankfully when we were in Idaho, it never rained. If it would have, we would have gotten wet inside the tent, and it would have probably ended our use of that tent right then and there because of that issue. So that's something to be noted. Another thing to be noted about the T8 Hub Tent, and it is a con, and it does involve the rainfly, is there are still 4 corners with stakes that have to go into the tent. The big sides of the tent, you can either roll them up and tie them off to allow air to kind of go up under the rainfly a little bit. If you don't need to have it sloped because of the weather, things like that, you can do that. But otherwise, on each side, it unravels itself, and you have to stake it down. What we have found after going through Idaho is that if you have it rolled up because the weather is supposedly nice, we would highly recommend not doing that whatsoever. And the reason is any huge gust of wind will rip that rainfly right off. I'm saying this because it happened to us. We had the rainfly rolled up, it had been super nice, and one of the nights it was really, really warm, and we wanted, the rainfly up in case it rained, but we wanted to be able to have air come through. We didn't see the point in staking it, unraveling it and staking it down. It wasn't going to do anything but help keep heat trapped in. So we wound it up in the middle of the night. The wind picked up and ripped that thing right off. And thankfully it didn't fly super far away, but it ripped it right off. Didn't matter that you had the 2 little bungee cords holding on to the sides. It ripped it right off. So for us, it's a con. And for others, if you want this tent, and it's not going to be windy, stake down the sides of the rainfly to prevent it from flying away, because it ripped it right off. It was annoying as all get out, because we're in the middle of the night, we just hear it, and it shook the whole tent as it ripped it right off. And when it ripped it off, all the stakes within the rainfly came out. Now it's not broke, they do slide back into place, but it was so strong that it ripped that part completely out, and those were scattered on the ground. So we had to, find them plus the rainfly in the middle of the night. But that was a big con about the tent, that it was a learning point of, okay, you got to always have the rainfly sides staked down. You can't just roll them up thinking that it's going to be nice. Another con about the tent, and it is, once again, it's not the tent itself. The actual tent itself is great, guys. All these cons are more or less about the extra components that make this tent a tent. The next one is the tent stakes that came with the tent. They are not, these thick, solid metal tent stakes. They are these flimsy aluminum style tent stakes that if you start hammering into the ground and it hits a rock or hits a hard patch in the ground that you can't hammer through, you smack the stake because you think, you're still hammering it. It will bend the stake, completely bend it, and if you try and bend it back, if you're lucky enough, it might bend back. Otherwise, it might break. We've had several of these break due to them bending because the ground was too hard to hit it into, or the top where you're supposed to hit it with the hammer has completely bent itself up, and now you're trying to hammer onto just this thin piece of aluminum. It all just varies. But for us, the tent stakes that came with the tent are absolutely garbage. And I would highly recommend buying some solid tent stakes to help stake this thing into the ground. And then my last con, guys, is just like the T4 Hub Tent, just like all the hub tents, is the doors. It's the only con on the entirety of the structure of the tent itself, is that damn design flaw of having those lovely crescent-shaped doors that you just trip on every time you're trying to get into it. It is the most annoying thing in the world. And just like the T4 tent, this tent's no different, and it's frustrating. You trip on them, and I'm not going to harp on it anymore, but that is another con for us, is those doors. But it's, once again, something we learn to live with. Overall, guys, the T8 Hub Tent is a pretty good tent. We love it. It is super roomy. It is nice. We're trying to figure out what to do with the Rainfly. We have reached out to Gazelle, because they are not a sponsor of the channel, so I'll say whatever I please. Even if they were, I would. But we have reached out to them. We are waiting to hear back about, if a warranty covers the Rainfly, or what we could do with the Rainfly, because that at the moment has become a stopper in wanting to use the tent, because we don't want it to rip anymore, and we don't want to be in inclement weather where it's just going to rain on us. Otherwise, guys, we love the tent. If you are looking for a family tent where you can have you and your family in that tent, or space just to have your gear so it's not in the, outside or whatnot, this tent works awesome, guys. It's not hard to pick up, or, it's not hard to erect. It's not hard to take down. Taking it down, once again, you can do it by yourself. It's going to take a bit more time. Taking it down with a second person makes it much faster. But thank you all for joining me. I hope you guys found this informational. A link of this will be in my link tree, so you guys can go ahead, click on that. You can find it. It'll take you to the Gazelle site. Now, if you want the specific type of T8 hub tent that I have, you may have to go to a different site to find it. As far as I am aware, Gazelle has changed the styling of the newer T8 hub tents to where they kind of have like the ensuite patio style viewing, where it's more mesh on one end of the tent than the other. But you can find the tent that I have out there. I'll leave another link to another site that has the tent that I have. Otherwise, guys, thank you all for joining me. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. You guys are what makes this channel happen. Otherwise, I'll catch you all next time out on the trail. Take care.